month or something like that. We're being stop playing with me, Amber. Right? I think so. I want to say it's $57 or whatever it is, and y'all can put the cost if anybody knows what the funnel is in the chat. But so that's the investment for that a month. But it makes you worth more an hour. 67. There you go. 59. There you go. One of them. I think it's 60. I'm going with 60. So you have to understand that in this business, if you're dialing $35 an hour, you are making less money an hour on purpose. If you're the more dials you can make an hour, the more money you make an hour. So start understanding that philosophy, because that's how this business works. So that's the first IPA. The second IPA is running an appointment. So write that down. Running an appointment. That's your second IPA. 1 hour's worth of work. So if you run an appointment, I don't care if it was 15 minutes or if it was an hour and a half, the only thing you get credited for, Matt, is 1 hour worth of work. Because on average, that's what an appointment should take you, right? Because some people are going to say yes, some people are going to say no. So it'll balance out to an hour. So one appointment ran is an hour's worth of work. Then the third one is interviews. An interview should take you 15 minutes worth of work. Okay. If you take longer than 15 minutes in an interview, you are not following what we teach you. There is a script that you can get from your upline, and it takes 15 minutes to interview someone and put them into licensing or send them a contract, right? Send them an onboarding. 15 minutes worth of work. So if you run one interview, I don't care if it took you 45 minutes, Matt, you get 15 minutes worth of credit at work. Okay. That means because you should be able to do 4 interviews in an hour. So those are the only 3 things. I want y'all to circle those on, and I want you to write next to those. These are the only things that pay me. This is too important for us to really not grasp this concept. These are the only things that pay me. Okay. And I also want to dig into what doesn't pay us, but does feel like work. And I'm going to give y'all, if y'all haven't heard me say this or give my lesson on this, right? I remember I was working 60 to 70 hours a week here. I was in front of my computer like y'all see me, and I'm on all these calls and I'm doing all these things. And I wasn't making the money, right? I was depositing very little, and bills were starting to stack up, and I'm like, oh, I'm falling behind. Something's wrong. And I was building a business, and I remember me calling Chris and saying, hey, the system doesn't work, Chris. There is no way I can make this type of money that I want to as a producer and build my team. I'm working 60, 70 hours a week and I'm falling behind. And he goes, Joe, you're just not working. I wish I would have heard me on the phone with Chris. I was really upset, for lack of a better word. Okay. He told me, I'm like, how dare you tell me I am not working when I'm here 60 hours and I have an actual office, right? So I actually leave my house. I go, I am not at home and I am working for 60 to 70 hours. And how dare you tell me I'm not working? He goes, Joe, you may be and he goes, look, I'm just trying to coach you. You may be in front of your computer or in your office. It doesn't mean you're working. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, let's look at your IPAs. I'm like, I know what an IPA, Chris. I do a lot of them. That's all I do all day. What are we talking about? He goes, well, let's add them up. And this is why a tracker is super important, because if you can't track what your IPAs are, right, it's not a good thing. And let's see here. So I want to make sure y'all truly understand that. Let me go into mine. I'm not going to expose anyone today, Cody. So why it's so important, I'm going to share my screen and I want y'all to see this. Okay. This is a tracker. You should have some sort of tracker. Okay. Some sort. You see this right here, IP hours worked. Okay. So Chris says, Joe, you're in the office 60 hours. Let's go run through this. How many dials did you do, Joe? And that particular week, I think I was right around like 350. Okay. So the cool part is if you have a tracker, right, you can type in all your dials, right? I think I dialed that Saturday, probably dialed like 100 dials that Saturday. Then Monday I worked a little bit more and I did another 50 dials. And then I did another 100, let's just say another 100 the next Tuesday because I didn't have any more appointments. And then I did maybe like another 50. Okay, you see how my calculator calculates it? So that gave me 10 hours worth of work. And then he goes, well, how many appointments did you run? I'm like, well, they're not showing up, Chris. And I haven't sat with that many. He goes, Joe, just how many appointments? I'm like, I've sat with 5. He goes, okay. So you sat with 5. See, 5 sits tells me I've worked 15 hours with my dials. And then he goes, well, how many interviews? I've been interviewing all week. I mean, a lot of no-shows, but I did quite a bit of interviews. How many interviews, Joe? And I'm like, I think I've interviewed 10. He goes, okay. Right? I'm sorry, 8, right? And he goes, okay, that's good. You interviewed 8. And he goes, Joe, I just want you to add that up for me. And I remember I had to add it up. And then he goes, what's that? What's the number you're looking at, Joe? And it took me a little bit to answer him because if y'all can see that right here, it was 18 hours worth of work. It was 18 hours worth of work. So I want all of y'all to think, look, even if you did a 500 dial day or week, it's 24 hours. Even if you sat with another 2, which we seldom, very few of us sit with 7 a week, right? And when I started looking at this, I hadn't even worked 26 hours, even if I did do that, right? And I just really want y'all to understand that number. And look, our calculators, right, add all this stuff up. Even if you dial 1,000 dials, 1,000 dials, that's 1,000 dials. That's 33 hours worth of work. That's not even a full-time job, okay? And I really want y'all to start looking at these because it matters, okay? First of all, I also want to talk on this subject, okay? Who has made, and this I'd love a show of hands, who's made over 100,000 a year? Okay. Can y'all type in the chat how many hours you worked a week for $100,000 a year job? Let's see some of those. Because at the restaurant, I was working 70 plus. Yeah, Cody, you got me. I was doing 70 plus to make my 100. I made like 100, 110 a year at the restaurant. Okay. Who has made 150,000 or more a year? Okay. Those of y'all, can you put in how many hours you worked there for that? So when I was making 250 plus with a couple of my businesses, I was pushing 75 to 80 hours. Okay. Why I think that's important is because I think we have a misunderstanding that some of us to make 100,000 to 150,000 a year or 200,000 a year that we're going to work 40 hours. I want to put it out there. Y'all can hate me or not, but I don't know any job that pays 100, 150 plus for 40 hours or less. It is very, very rare. Okay. So in case you don't know that, I want y'all to know that because then that also aligns your income. So if you're making $50,000 or $60,000 a year here, and you're putting about 20 to 30 hours, that's where you fall. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. That just says if you do put in a full week's worth of work, Matt, you're going to make 150 here. So I just want y'all to understand that concept because a lot of times, Nicholas, it's like, hey, I'm not finding success and I'm struggling and it makes no sense, right? Like I'm working a lot, right? And my income doesn't show me that. Okay. And I'm going to dig into what's working a lot and what's actually working a lot. And that's why an IPA and understanding this business is super important in production. You've got to know your IPAs. Okay. If you don't have these trackers, you are not running your business. Okay. You own it. I want to put ownership on your business. It is not your upline's responsibility to fill out a tracker. It's not even your upline's responsibility to say, hey, Matt, can you fill out your tracker? That is not their responsibility. It is you are running an actual business. You need to own it. Put your name on it. It is yours. We talked about this at leadership, and I really wanted to bring that to y'all because it's on my mind, and I want to help. We work for the 9th highest paying company. I promise you, you should be making $100,000 to $200,000 your very first year if you do this properly. Okay. Elijah Carujos is 27-year-old that's making $300,000 this year. And he's just really good at IPAs. He is very disciplined. Okay. So and here's the cool part. I'm not disciplined and I still make that kind of income. I'm just all over the place and scattered. So both ways will work. I promise. As long as you have enough IPAs. If you ever go into my trackers and we share them in our calls, my IPAs are always very, very high because I have a lot of dials, a lot of scheduled interviews, and a lot of scheduled appointments. And so just by default, I end up sitting and interviewing enough people that my IPAs are always very high. I probably am very rarely under 30 to 35 hours a week. Very rarely. Okay. And I just want y'all to understand the IPA count. So I'm not saying you're not going to work 50 or 60 hours. You can do it in a lot less. I'm just giving y'all what it might take at the beginning. Okay. Is understanding these. And so again, now that we've identified an IPA, what is not an IPA? So I do want y'all to write this down. Okay. So I want you to put, I do not get paid. Write that. And then we're going to do a list of some things I do not get paid for. Let's do that. I do not get paid for training. So I love my call. Okay. But you are not making money on this call right now. Okay. This is not an IPA. Okay. You do not get paid for reading a book, training. Okay. Sitting in the Zoom room, listening to someone. Right. So I know we want to plug into the Zoom room, but you listening, Bridget complaining, we do not get paid for complaining either. Okay. If it's not, and I just want y'all to have those in there, right? Talking to your team, right? If you're building, talking to your team, coaching, right? None of those actually pay you. Okay. None of those actually pay you. I just want y'all to know, how do I control my money today and right now? What deposits in your bank account? Right. I love to share all my wins and actual goals. Right. I'm trying to, I'm not trying. I need $20,000 in the next 2 weeks so that I can pay for some of my wedding. I love the fact that we are in this business because I can just invest in more leads, dial more, and deposit more money. There is nowhere else you can go do that. You can buy your income here. This is one of the coolest things. That's the beauty about being in sales. Even beats real estate, because if you're a real estate agent, you're waiting for someone to call you, or you're trying to find someone to show them a house. There's time, there's months in that process. Versus I can start. In fact, you can start a lead order today. Leads will be in today and tomorrow in the next couple of days. You'll sit with them in the next couple of days and you'll have deposits by Monday or Tuesday. That is a fact. And I just love reminding everyone, all of us of that, even myself, right? Because right now I'm like, I gotta make some extra cash because I want to pay off some stuff, right? And so just fall in love with those IPAs. And what I really want y'all to fall in love with, the fact that you have control of your IPAs. Okay. So now let's dig into what's a good schedule look like. And anyone have any questions, right? Because please, right, feel free to interact, unmute, and just ask the question, right? What do you mean I don't get paid because of training? Anything on an hour's worth of work, on sitting in an appointment, 15 minutes for an interview, and right at 40 to 50 dials an hour is where you need to be. All right, I like it. So what does a good work week look like? And listen, I'm just going to give y'all what I do, right? And then y'all base it off of what you want, but what I'm willing to work, right? And I'll say, in fact, I'll start when I started with Symmetry. So I was willing to work 7 days a week. I worked in a restaurant. I was used to working Saturdays and Sundays. I was normally off Mondays and Tuesdays. So I was willing to work 7 days a week from about 7 a.m. to about 8 p.m. That's what I was willing to work. I didn't have to work all those hours, but my schedule was available for that amount. Okay. 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to about 8 p.m. I needed to recover, right, or remake my $100,000 that I quit my job and had to come into this. So in between there, this was what's really cool about what we do. In between that work window, right? I go to church. So I was able to check off, hey, from 8 a.m. to about 12 on Sunday, I do not work. We go to church, we take my family, my kids. After that, it's a tradition, right? That I'm embedding into my kids. Right after that, we all go cook breakfast together. We hang out for a little bit, and then they get tired of us because they're becoming teens now, Rodney. They think they're cool, right? And by 11 a.m., they don't want anything to do with mom and dad, and they go to their rooms and they're on their phones or doing something, right? Or they're outside playing. So the cool part is after that, I knew I could work. So my Sunday was available I like to dial from like 1 to about 6 on a Sunday. Okay. Saturdays, I like the evenings with my family. So when I scheduled, I was like, hey, you know what? After 4, I didn't want to work. Right. That was what I was plugging into my schedule. Right. Then all our calls throughout the week, right? Our Monday morning, right, with the cook master, right? Then our huddles, I plug those in, the national call. I would start putting all that in. Then my kids, and then for seasons, my kids are in sports, right? So in seasons, right? Sometimes, hey, you know what? I don't want to work past 6 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays because that's when they go to basketball practice. And you know what? Then that also alternates my Saturdays, right? I wanted Saturday off from 9 a.m. to 1, Rodney, because they would go play basketball and I wanted to go see them, right? But I had control of that. Y'all have control of that in your schedule, right? And then something that was really important to me then, you know what? And now that I'm going to say it, I need to put it back because it's off my schedule right now. Is every Thursday evening, me and Sandra had a date night, and that was important for us too, right? Because in case you don't know our story, we split up and we're getting back together and we're getting remarried in May, right? So that was something that, hey, I want to commit to Thursday evenings. I want a date night with Sandra. And these things were plugged in. And the cool part is I got to do everything, Matt, that I could never do in my other job. I literally got to do everything. I want y'all to write that down. I can do everything that I want to do if you schedule it. I was able to do everything I wanted to do. And I get crazy. If you knew my schedule, I'm silly. I like cars and I'm like, hey, you know what? I want to go to Havasu and go see this boat show. And right, like I put things on my schedule that I want to do. Then it was corporate overviews, right? It was like, hey, I like to go visit my team. I like to go learn because I mean, the only reason I get to share all these lessons is because I've been to a ton of corporate overviews because I wanted to learn, right? So I would make sure, hey, there's a corporate overview in California that's going on my schedule. Hey, I want to fly to Knoxville, right? Because I wanted to train and build my business just like Chris did. I spent a week, right? I was like, hey, you know what? I got my sister. She used to run my office, and me and her scheduled the whole week in Chris's office. Like we were able to plug in whatever we wanted to do, because guess what? You are the boss of your business. Now, once you fill that in, then I have a couple of things that I want to make sure y'all all plug into your schedule because these are necessities to create IPAs and IPA hours. Okay. The very first thing is a very structured morning. When I am off, and look, I am not perfect. I fall off my schedule all the time. In fact, me and Kristen were just talking about that I'm off my schedule and I need to get back in my balance of what my routine is. Right. But when I'm on a good routine schedule, I do things in the morning that kickstart my day. Okay. Because you do not want to just wake up and go sit on the phone. That is not healthy. You're going to get burnt out and you're going to be stressed. Okay. So the first thing, right, you wake up is you can do these in these three right there are in whatever order you want. I've read all kinds of books. Some say wake up and pound 8 ounces of water because it's super healthy for you, right? And it gets your metabolism going, right? Others like their coffee, other likes to read and exercise. But so you wake up and these are the three things you should do first before anything else. And that's going to be exercise. And I'm just talking about 30 to 45 minutes. And I ain't talking about the gym, just movement. You can do yoga, you can stretch, you can walk, you can go to the gym, but you need 30 minutes of your body your brain requires it to set up the rest of your day. Okay. So it's exercise, read, and water. I promise you, look, I wouldn't be teaching this in the production call if I don't have facts on it. I promise you, when agents and anyone that has become a top producer, if if y'all want to unmute and talk to that, right? Like when they did their top producer run, I promise you, they did this a lot of days in that top producer run. For whatever reason, it works. I stopped trying to figure out why. I'm just giving you all the nuggets on it, right? So those are the three things you wake up and do, and that's going to allow you to have the mental capacity to go through go through 100 dials in your first session. Okay. So then so we're just going to go with Monday. If you wake up in the morning, right, you have our production or our cook master call. And then write these hours down from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. That should be a dial session, right? And that's what, 5 hours or so. You only need three, but you do need three. So you need 2 3-hour dial sessions a day. If you're going to do this full time, you need 2 3-hour dial sessions a day. If you're better than that, I'm just giving you all the average. Great. If you're not producing what you want to be producing, these are the nuggets that you need to do. Okay. So between 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., why those hours? Why until 1? Because 12 to 1 is normally lunch hours, right? And really, like from 11 to 1, a lot of people start having lunch breaks. So that's why you want to include those hours, because during the morning, that's a great dial session in there. And then why I say 8 o'clock to 9, right? And I have those added in there because people are barely getting to work. They'll pick up their phone on their way to work, right? And so just in that time zone, right, in between 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., you want to have a 3-hour or so dial session where you at least dial 100 dials, at least 100 dials, right? If you're doing 50 dials an hour and you do a 3-hour dial session in the morning, that should get you 150 dials. That's why I say at least 100 dials, because if you have A leads, you probably don't even need the full 100, right? But you want to have a good solid 3-hour dial session, Matt.
So you're saying, are you taking triple dials into that 100 dials? So not
Correct.
contacting 100 leads, but
Correct. Triple
okay.
dot. Yep. Every
Yep.
time you hit send, you should hit send in between those hours at least 100, 150 times in the morning to go through your all leads, right? And
Cool.
ideally, what you're trying to accomplish in your schedule, that IPA, is you want to get through all your leads, right? And remember, you should never have more than 60 leads at once, because that's now you're pushing 180 dials or so, right, to triple dial them all. So you want to have that built into there. I want to give you all this nugget. That morning dial session is the hardest dial session for whatever reason. I don't know why. At least for me and most of my agents, that is our biggest gap or our biggest hole, that morning dial session. I think it's so easy to get wrapped up saying, I'm calling carriers, I'm on calls, blah, blah, blah is all I can tell you. It's an excuse. Okay. I want to help y'all solve that morning dial session. A book. It's called Eat That Frog. So please write that down. If y'all have not read that book, when you're working on your schedule, you must read that book before you build your schedule. I promise you, it will make a difference. Why is it so important? Eat That Frog. What its intent is to teach you to do the hardest thing first, or the most important, not the hardest, the most important to your business. Nothing, right? So when we talk about IPAs, the very first one is dials, because you don't have appointments unless you dial. Okay. It is the main thing you must work on, your dials. You are not in business if you don't have dials. So Eat That Frog just teaches you to put the three main things. It teaches you stuff like have a checklist of what you want to do today, Matt. And so like your first thing should be your 100 dials, right? Or your 150 dials in the morning. And man, it's amazing when you check that box, the feeling of being able to check, you've knocked out your first dial session incomplete. I promise you the rest of your day, you're going to go crush it. It's just that hard morning, right? Nobody wants to start. It's that very first dial session that you need to knock out. Your business needs it. Okay. That's how you stay in business. So The next dial session, right, is going to be between 4 and 8. And look, you can dial all day. Just giving y'all tips, right, on what your schedule should look like. Okay, because you do. Let me make sure I say this very clearly. You do need to dial in the morning and in the evening. You do not know when your leads work. You don't know if they work in the morning, if they work in the evenings. What you do know is their mortgage protection lead for the most part, and mortgage protection leads have a job. That means they work somewhere. They had to give credit, right? So that means they have a job. That means you need to be able to call them in the morning or evening so that you can find a good time for them. So in the evening, it's that 4 to 8 hour. I like a little bit later. My favorite hours personally are like from 5 to 7:30. That's like my sweet spot. Five, it kind of gets going, but man, that's 6 to 7 hour. Whoo, everybody picks up. I can almost always, Matt, I almost always book 6 appointments between 7 and 8. Almost always. If I have a dial session between 7 and 8, I almost always book 6 appointments. Now here's where this is where, like, I'm not perfect. I always mess up because I knew that. That's why I always sucked at the morning dial session. Because I knew I could get on the phone in the evenings and book my 6 to 8. The problem was, why was I only booking 6 to 8 for tomorrow when if I had dialed in the morning, I could have had 10 to 12. Right? You're choking your own business. You're hurting yourself. You're right. You have so much more capability if you have a really good schedule. Tara, you have your hand up.
Just a quick question. When you're
Yeah.
a single parent, how
Mhm.
do you manage the demand of homework, dinner, all that stuff for
You
your
have
second dial session?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So you need to have it very well scheduled. You need to prep before it, right? Things that I've seen single parents do is they make sure they've already before they pick up the kids right from school. We do have that like 1 to 3 p.m. right, like area is prepping for your dinners, already having them done. Some great ideas was make plenty today for tomorrow, so that leaves you free for tomorrow as well. These are things me and Sandra have had to do over the years, right? Because we needed a schedule. Because before I had my office, I did have to work from home, and it was hard. But there's a great saying, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but a great saying I would love for some of y'all to write down or write this one down is, don't let the excuse of why you're doing this be the excuse of why you don't do this. Right? So don't let the excuse of why you're doing this be the excuse of why you don't do this. What do I mean by that? Our kids. That's probably our biggest one, right? I want to do this for my kids so that I can have a flexible schedule, so I can do all. And then the first thing a parent tells us, right, is, why I have kids, right? I can't do this. Like, no, that's the beauty of it. You can work your schedule. One thing that Nicole did and does very well is, so she does all that, Tara, and she's in the East Coast, so she has West Coast states. So she actually dials a lot later in her time zone. She dials from like 9 to 11 p.m. or stuff like that, or 8 to 11, because it's earlier in New Mexico and Washington, right? So she actually puts her kids to bed, gets them all, feeds them, puts them to bed, gets them ready, and then she starts dialing. So she'd be in the workroom with us sometimes late in the evening, right, in her time zone. So there's all kinds of really cool ways to work around it, right? If you're in the West Coast, you can start early, right? You can start at 5 a.m. because you get an East Coast state. So there's so many ways. Get with your upline. They can help you find a really good schedule, right? And then one thing I had to learn too was, when I had kids around, was it's okay if they're around, right? So I think a lot of times we want to be in complete silence, right? And we don't want the kids playing around or whatever it may be. And even as I traveled, me and James, we would see Elijah for specifically that he'd be traveling. He's always writing apps. And I'm like, man, how come I never write an app? My excuse was, well, I'm in the hotel lobby, right? Or I was at a restaurant or at a Starbucks and it's too loud to run an appointment. I told myself every excuse. And then one day I was just like, they're doing it, I need to do it. And so I took away a lot of that excuses too, right? There's nothing wrong. My kids would have to, right? Because sometimes my wife was doing other things. And so the kids would have to come to my office and they were running around playing. And I used to get so upset that they would make noise while I was dialing. But then I embraced the fact that they were around. And so I'd be in an appointment and my little 6-year-old, I swear I would tell them, don't come in the office because I'm running an appointment. It was like literally asking him to knock on the door and come in because he had an emergency. He needed water or something. Right. So he would come, and I used to hate that, and I embrace it now. And the families absolutely love it. Like that is a rapport builder. They're like, oh yeah, we work from home. Everyone works from home now. So there's so many people. So start embracing that. Sometimes we think we need to work around it, and you actually don't. You can work with it. So that I think that'll help too, right? You don't need to be so structured on that part. Um, let's see. Uh, any other questions on that, right? Hours and 2 dial sessions. You need one in the morning, one in the evening. You need to build that into your schedule. Those are non-negotiables,
Oh,
right? 5 days a week.
you calling at 8, or are you just calling a different time zone?
I call mine till 8. So
No, I'm talking about in the morning.
same thing, 8
You
a.m.
call you you
Yeah,
call
so
at
I
8.
only work my time zone. So those are times, right? Whoever you're calling, the client, right, should be 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then in the evening, right, you have that 4 to 8 hour, right? Their time zone. That's where you can take advantage there, right, of having to cook dinner and stuff for the kids, where you can work later hours, right? And then one thing too, I want to talk about a schedule. We're so used from a job where you went to work and you clocked in and worked your shift, right? I think what's really hard for us to understand is your shift could be for 4 different slots throughout the day, right? So you can work an 8-hour shift from like 8 to 10, go have lunch or go to the gym or go do something, and then come back and work from 12 to 2, take, right, go pick up the kids, do something, and then come back and work from like 6 to 10, right? So your schedule doesn't also have to be an 8-hour straight shift. And that was something that was hard for me to break, right? I went to the restaurant and worked, and I worked, and I never took a break in between there, right? And so that was hard for me to understand here too. So I hope that gives y'all a lot of clarity. Your shift does not have to run straight. You don't even want it to in this industry because this is very mental, right? Like you don't want to dial, and this is why we only teach a 3-hour dial session. So you know what? I'm glad I brought that up. Do not dial more than 3 hours straight. It will not be productive. You will be very frustrated. It will not be pretty at the end, right? So I hope you never have like a 6-hour dial session straight. That is not healthy. Do not do that. You need a mental break. Okay. It sucks to stay on the phone and people yelling at you and telling you no. Okay. You need to be able to have a little mental break in between there. So I hope that any clarity that y'all need, right? It does not have to be a straight 6 to 8 hour shift a day. Don't do that either.
Question.
Yeah,
Just clarifying, in between those dial sessions, you should be hopefully working on preparing for appointments or actually having those appointments, correct?
correct. Yep.
If I can add something really quick, Joe,
Yeah,
to make it a lot easier on yourself, Joe mentioned switchboard funnel earlier. That'll make your 3-hour dial sessions a lot more effective, right? Because you'll be able to do 70 to 100 dials in an hour.
it's so quick. I mean, you can get. I did my dial session on Saturday last week, not this past one, but the week before. I did it in about less than 2 hours because I dialed 2 live dial sessions and I ran 2 interviews and I took a couple of phone calls for agents. So in less than actual 2 hours of dialing, I booked 14 appointments through Funnel.
Yeah.
Like it is very fast. If you are not on it, I highly suggest you're making your job harder if you're not. I promise you, it's
And
worth.
if you're a new agent and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get through 200, 300 dials a day, funnel is how.
Yep, in very few hours.
Are funnel and
Training,
switchboard the same thing, or are they two different things?
it's the same. It's right. It's called Funnel Switchboard now, or Switchboard Funnel.
Yeah,
Whatever.
so there's switchboard activate, which is discontinued, and then switchboard funnel.
So switchboard funnel again, but don't go get it by yourselves, right? Please get with your upline so they can help you do it. The next one I want to talk about is training. Okay, you got to schedule this in there. One of the reasons we have been able to write the production, we used to have a lot of training. So I want to give you all lessons from back in the day and to right now. Before, when we had to drive to families' homes, I was forced to train for about a solid 2 hours to 3 hours a day. What do I mean by force? They taught us what was called the rolling university. The rolling university was we listened to SoundCloud in our car instead of music. So they would actually teach us. They would say, hey, please do not listen to your favorite radio station. Get off XM radio. You need to listen to SoundCloud audio. So in between our appointments, right, every single day in between our appointments, we were training SoundCloud audios, how to book better appointments, how to close, how to build emotion, right? Everything that's out there, right? So just take advantage of making sure in your schedule. So where I'm going with that is every day you got to have some kind of training. Every day, a 30-minute session to an hour session, but you got to build it. You got to build it in. Okay. If you are not writing 15,000 a month and issuing it, you need to get trained. You cannot continue to do what you're doing every single week and expect to get better without trying to get better. Right? So make sure you plug it every single day. I highly suggest you do some type of training. Okay. My best suggestions right now, because of the way, right, we're virtual, is you want to plug that in the morning. Right? So you read, you get your exercise, and whenever you start your day, maybe that's one of the first things you do. Right? Either call your carriers, get your policies straight. Don't trick yourselves. I wish we wrote that many policies that you need that every single day. We don't. Okay. Even our elite producers write a couple of applications, write a few applications a week. There's not that much follow-up. Don't let yourself trick yourself that you got to be every morning. You need 30 minutes to an hour of follow-up with the carrier. That is not true. Okay. I would, what's more important is 30 minutes to an hour of training, and break it up. Right. What I don't suggest is try to mix these two. So do not go to the gym and tell yourself you're listening and training. I don't believe in that. Okay. Because you don't have this while you're lifting weights or while you're running. Okay. And if you're not taking notes, y'all do the research, Google it. How much do you retain if you just listen to something? It's like 10%. It's very little. Okay. So there's no way you're going to tell me you went to the gym and listened to a SoundCloud audio for an hour and you're like, no, but I do all this training. Like, no, you don't. You're not taking notes, and then you're not being intentional about applying it to your next appointment. Okay. Because that's the trick on your schedule. You need to take notes from your training and then go apply it. Like right now, I hope y'all are taking notes. And then are you going to go apply it to your next appointment? Right? And in this case, to your next day. So that means everybody knows in the morning, you should go exercise, drink water, and read. Tomorrow, what does that look like for most of us? You are the judge of your own self there, right? So training, be very cautious with that. Be cautious with your training during the day, right? If you look at the end of the day, I gave y'all two time zones, right? So, or 2 areas to dial. But Tara, that doesn't mean from 1 to 4, you go train or you go do something. Because remember, what are the only 3 things that pay us? And the first one is dialing. So if you don't have appointments, you should just be dialing all day. Take a break, have an hour session, right? Of some relax, walk around, reset. But you should be dialing all day if you don't have appointments. That's just the fact. No one should stop at 50 to 60 dials a day, unless you have all your appointments and you're writing 10K, 5K a week. But no one should stop dialing unless you are producing what you wanted to produce. That is your own limitation. Nobody said to stop at 200. I have had people dial now. I look at some of these dialers. I've seen people dial 900 dials in a day. I used to be impressed by my 600, Amber, but it ain't cool no more. 600 dials a day used to be pretty cool. It ain't. Listen, you don't have to do that forever, but you do have to do it to get to where you need to go. Okay, we were just at the leaders training, and Marshall Whalen told us he told Jacob Pogue, hey, you want to make this work? You should be willing. He goes, what are you willing to do? And Jacob Pogue said, I'm willing to work at, what was it, Amber? At 8 a.m. to like 2 a.m. because he was working Hawaii leads. And in 4 months, he retired his wife. The possibilities here are endless if you want to work. Look, it's going to take some work, and you got to have a really good schedule. Okay. You got to make some sacrifices too. Look, right now, do not plan every single date night. What's important? There's such thing as wants and needs. And on your schedule, you got to have your needs. And your need is you need to pay your bills and you need to be profitable and you have to make money here. We are the 9th highest paying company. You should be making $10,000 minimum and do it for 6 months. You should be making $20,000 a month. No matter what, if you are not doing that currently, you just got work to do. That's it. And we can help you do that. You need to be able to sacrifice some stuff right now to get you where you want to get. So on your schedule, make sure you have that. One of the biggest things I would highly, highly suggest is please write this down. Put 1 hour equals 2,200. 1 hour equals 2,200. Does anybody know what that means?
Time in the workroom. Live
Dialing in the workroom. Yes, sir, Mr. Vincent. Okay. Listen, I love stories because I can tell y'all this works until somebody does it, right? James, my brother, was like, man, it's tough right now. I'm going through my little down. I'm trying to produce. I'm like, James, y'all are doing everything as hard as y'all can. I'm like, how do you guarantee if you do this for 6 weeks, you should be averaging 2,200 an hour if you have a dial session? Last week, he scheduled himself 5 hours. That should be a 10K week. He wrote 16. And then I think that was capped. I think it was like 23 uncapped. Okay. I can't come up with this stuff. We are choosing to make this as hard as we can. If you go into this, and I highly suggest right now, you can, that means you can still have a $5,000 week right now. Today's Thursday and Friday. If you go in there and schedule yourself 2 hours today, 2 hours tomorrow, that means 5K is coming because you have to, as long as you're doing the right things, right? You're dialing 40 to 50 dials an hour, you're following the script and you're booking appointments. But we choose, right? We let our emotion get into this where I'm embarrassed, I'm shy. Okay. Well, being embarrassed and shy does not pay bills. Okay. I also want to bring something else to reality. Anywhere else we worked in front of all our peers and bosses. What are we talking about here? Am I the only one that thinks that? James worked in a dial room, right? At AT&T, and there was a manager standing behind them. They were recording their calls and they listened to them. When I worked in the restaurant, I was the manager and I had to stand behind my server and listen to them follow the script. And my server didn't follow the script. When they came to the back in the kitchen, I'm like, hey, you're off script. Let's make sure we're doing that properly.
Well, before we even got it, in Sawgrass, they had to go over the script before they could even get on the floor.
Right.
And then we will follow up with them.
So being shy and being scared and embarrassed, you can't pull that card. Any other job, you work in front of clients and you work in front of your peers and your bosses. I can no longer accept that excuse because I've been thinking about this, and that's one of the most important things. We worked in front of everyone. What are we talking about? Why are we trying to say, hey, I'm just not going to unmute because I'm shy?
Okay? I was a teacher. I worked in front of 20-something kids, and let me tell you what,
I think they're smarter.
The worst critics. You spell one word wrong, it's the end of the
right? I love that. That's reality. What are we talking about here? Why is the dial room right now? Why is that schedule empty? Here, I'm gonna share it with y'all. And you know what? Maybe this is a great learning right here. Maybe we just don't know how to get to it. Everybody see my screen? Perfect, right? So you go here. We're gonna go to Cook Zoom Room, cookzoomroom.com. It's right here. Click here to view a dial session. This is the schedule. Look at all this. Just us alone, there's 65 of us here. These are the only people that have scheduled dial sessions. And I want y'all to really look at these names because I promise you they're going to have APV on Monday. You're going to see, right, when we do the cook master call and the people that have APV, I promise you are on this list. Okay, I can't make this up. I promise it works. Why is your name not on this schedule? You're choosing not to do this. Okay, 2,200 on average. What does on average mean? That means there were folks that were doing way more. Okay, and guess what? If you're brand new, you might do a little bit less. But what if you can almost guarantee you're going to have APV, right, consistently in the next 6 weeks if you go schedule yourself in there? So I hope I have it open. I'm going to see who plugs their names. Y'all can all go right after this call and plug your names into this. On average per hour, 2,200. James did what? What was your total APV, James, and divided by 5 scheduled hours? What was that? If you can give us that math real quick. Even if it was the capped one, 16,000 divided by 5 hours. It's more than $5,000, right? Or $3,000 an hour.
Yeah, 322.
Okay, I promise you, these things work, but you're in control of your schedule. So you plug that in there. And then at the end of the day, I just want to make sure we close this off with what are we trying to accomplish? And before I get into that, does anyone have any questions on what your schedule should look like? And please don't be shy. I want to help you build it. Right?
I'm a new agent. What
Yeah.
was those words that you put into the Google and look for? I didn't write them down.
Oh, the website is cookzoomroom.com.
Okay.
So that's where we're in right now. We're in the Cook Zoom room. So when you right before you just click in to get into the room, right under there's another button that has the schedule available.
Okay.
And it's in the chat now. It's cookzoomroom.com. So that's how y'all got into this room that we're in right now. Okay, but just before you jump into the room, there's a button right underneath it that has the schedule, and it's for all of y'all. Please put yourself into that hour so that you can dial unmuted. That's the only way you're going to get coached. It's the only way. It works so well. Please take advantage of it. So I'm going to share this last thing with y'all. And anyone else have any more questions on what your schedule should look like? And please, anything. I'd love to help kind of, build that for you really quick if it doesn't make sense.
So schedule around the meetings that we have in the morning and in the evening.
Yep. And in the evening, we have no calls, right? So that's your evening should be pretty much open.
Okay.
Sweet. So I'm sure y'all have seen this slide. If y'all haven't, right? We had it at national conference. The owners teach us this, but this is what you're trying to accomplish. So I also want to touch on, you can have the best schedule you want, but if you're not accomplishing this, you're also doing something wrong. That's where maybe we need to look at lead investment, right? Are you investing in leads every single week? Because you can dial 1,000 dials a week, the same leads every single week and book no appointments. That's not what you're supposed to do, right? We buy and we invest in leads every single week so that your dials can book appointments, okay? And then if you're building a business, which looked like 95% of us were, you should be shooting for 10 plus interviews, whatever it takes to get there. And I want to hit on 15 appointments and 10 interviews first, okay? The 15 appointments, those are 15 sits, okay? I don't know anyone in the insurance industry that sits with less than 15 and is not super successful. When you cross the line of consistently sitting up with 12 appointments, if you sit with 12 families a week consistently, I promise you're making over $200,000 a year. You start knocking on that door of 15, it gets crazy. But you have to do whatever it takes. And I want to touch a little bit on whatever it takes. That means dial as much as you can, invest in as many leads as you can, but that also means hitting your warm market. That also means FIF resets, right? That's why you see that. You should be making sure you're running a proper appointment and you're getting referrals, okay? How do you multiply the one appointment that you book and you sat with is you get 2 or 3 referrals off of it, or you book an FIF reset. That's a multiplier, right? If you don't understand that I hope now you do, right? That is a multiplier to your business. You are leaving money on the table. IPAs, right? How do I get an extra IPA without more dials, Matt? Is I book a referral or I book an FIF. That's how I get from 1 to 2 or 3 out of that 1. It's a multiplier. I really want y'all to understand that. How do you make money in this industry? It can get really crazy. Okay, but you got to do whatever it takes. You have to fight for 15. So if today's Thursday and you've only sat with 2, you may not get to 15 this week, but I really want you to understand your schedule needs to change today and tomorrow, and you have to fight to get as high as you can. Get to 8, get to 10, get to 12, whatever it takes. You are not going to get paid unless you do that. So if you had, I was going to go to the movies today, maybe you shouldn't, and maybe you should stay home and dial more and book more appointments. Income is not going to come if you're not practicing IPAs. Okay. And everyone knows their own financial situation. But you have to know that. I want to make sure I'm honest with y'all on a schedule. My schedule is packed to try to accomplish what I'm trying to do. And I'm in my office till about 8 p.m. a lot of nights because I want to make $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year. And I'm not going to do that taking off at 4 o'clock or 5. So we don't do that. That's not the way we're making income, right? And I hope y'all understand that. 10 plus interviews. Why that's so important is you're trying to do this by yourself if you're not building. Do you know what happened? Well, if I didn't write an application today, maybe Rodney wrote an application. Maybe James is on fire right now. Maybe he writes an application. Eduardo wrote an app the other day, right? Guess what? That generates me income now, because I'm not having to do this by myself. So if you are choosing to also just produce and not build, realize you're also following this, you're also doing this system as hard as possible, right? Because you're only reliant on your appointments. So I also want y'all to think franchise and how do I produce at a very, very crazy high level, okay? And I'll get you off because we're over. So when I looked at, hey, can I sit with 15? But now as I build a team and I bring people on and I teach them to do with, imagine how many appointments I have scheduled today. Between me, James, Amber, the entire Miller organization, I probably have like 200 scheduled appointments today. I want y'all to take advantage of that at whatever. Amber has a couple of agents that are out there doing, right? That means she doesn't only have her 8 today. She probably has 25 scheduled appointments that she's able to make an income off of. So when we tie production to building, I want y'all to understand that too, right? Is I'm leveraging a system, right? And so the paychecks start to get a lot better when you start tying those in. And I just want to make sure we don't ever leave that out in production, because that is me producing, right? I've expanded my time. I've added multipliers. I've added an Amber, a Jeff, a Rodney, a James, right? Like we build an organization so that I can multiply my production and get paid off of that. So, man, I'm excited about that, right? That's what we talked about, leadership, filling these 2 boxes. I hope schedule, look, and take your time with it. Get with your upline and say, hey, and go build your schedule and then bring it to them and say, hey, what does this look like to you? Is this something, right, that should work? Will this generate the income that I want? That's the main question, right? Because you can want 200,000 and we look at your schedule and it's like, yeah, that's not going to happen with that, right? Because you only have 15 scheduled a week IPAs. So you're not going to make 200 grand. I'm sorry. Right? So just understand that, look at those IPAs, and I hope you add them up. IPAs you have to be, right now at the beginning, you have to be over 40 hours of work, okay, of actual IPA. So I hope that brings y'all a lot of value. Again, I'm excited to see what y'all post in band. Friday, tomorrow.
One last tidbit that Cody put on the chat, but I'm not sure everyone saw it. A lot of people put their names on the schedule, but Amber comes around, what, Friday, Amber?
Friday night, yep.
Friday night, and then she races all. So you have to do it every week.
Yep. Right, because it's a moving schedule for y'all, right? So every Friday night, you're going to see on Banj, they clear it, and then you go in there and fill your schedule, right? Get as many hours as you can. It works very well, right? I hope that brings y'all a lot of value. So thanks.